From the 23rd to the 26th of September 2016, it's Plymouth Arts Weekend. This is the official opening at the University of Plymouth.
The Plymouth principles, again, some of you have probably already seen it, but already it's been given a seal of approval from various funders and your Director of Visual Arts at Arts Council England, who, again, rather than a huge 70-page document that you really don't want to read, you feel utterly compelled to pick this up and to work with it. And that is really why we wanted to create a companion piece for it in the visual arts plan, in that we just felt that, again, with such a busy time that people have, just in the cultural sector, but generally, people have not got the time to be spending hours leafing through a huge weighty document. And actually, what is incredibly important is a useful piece of work, not just for the arts sector as well, and Claire will probably touch a little bit more on that, is actually for people who aren't necessarily confident in public art programming or commissioning, how they can understand some basic principles. And that was why we were utterly compelled when we spoke to situations that they could really help us understand how to develop an approach to public art. And I think it was also an approach of one where they give back a lot to us as a city, so that we understand how we can get better at the commissioning of work. It's not flying an organisation in and then suddenly they go. Claire has been working in a meaningful way with us for 2 years, and sometimes I think we can get a little bit piratey and thinking, I think they're not from the city. But again, what is incredibly important is that Claire is working in that developmental way, and it's hugely important and beneficial for us as a city. So it's a real pleasure to introduce Claire Doherty.
Thank you, Dom. It has been a real pleasure to work with many of you in the audience for the last 2 years or so. It's funny, if we were to all stand up and walk out and go into the street right now and ask any person walking down the street, what's public art? Probably the most likely response you might get, and maybe it's a bit skewed because it's Freshers' Week, would probably be a monumental piece of work. Public art still has this reputation in the public consciousness as being permanent, static, large scale, a sculpture, probably of a man, maybe on a plinth, possibly made of bronze. But invariably, that is in the public's collective imagination what they think of as public art. But what we discovered when we started working with a group of around 25 brilliant people here in Plymouth was that when we started to talk about the incredible experiences, cultural experiences we had had in the public realm, it was things like a giant sphinx made of sugar, a nomadic island, a year-long programme with young people, the building of a bakehouse, the involvement in an allotment, the giving away of winnings, of treasure, all sorts of incredible things that were across time, across place, involving different young people and older residents in lots of different ways. Very rarely were the descriptions of public art or the experience of art in the public realm that static sculpture. And one of the things we really recognise working with lots of cities and towns across the UK and overseas is that as the funds for culture dwindle in most local authorities, actually the money for public art is going up. Invariably, it's tied into regeneration, redevelopment. And we feel really passionately at situations that actually this is an untapped resource, and that potentially what a city like Plymouth could do would be the leading city in new approaches to public art, which are of real value to the city's artists, to the city's residents, to young people, to the development of talent here, to the tourism here, and that these funds could be used in a different way. And what that requires is a real different thinking around how to commission public art, an investment of time, an investment in artists, in new ideas, an investment in producing and an understanding of how you produce an artwork in the public realm, very, very different than curating in a gallery, for example, and an ongoing commitment from the city to look after those works which are permanent. We had a very frank conversation early on with this group of 25 in the city. We worked over a number of meetings, and we heard some very interesting things coming back. The things coming back were, for example, that not enough time was given in commissioning briefs to artists. Invariably, artists were getting sent a brilliant possible commissioning brief to produce a public artwork with a 6-month turnaround, which, if you're producing art in the public realm, is very difficult during, for example, production or licensing or any of those things that are involved. We were also hearing, actually, that the city didn't transfer skills from one project to the next. We were hearing that the brilliant public art officer, Jodie here, has to cover a whole range of different kinds of queries that she gets through from artists wanting to produce work outside of conventional venues. We were also hearing that the city has over 250 public artworks and a register for them, but not necessarily a plan for deaccession, when perhaps they've become unsuited to the context they were put into. So there were real key things that the city could start to do to change how public art is thought of in this place. And hence the Plymouth Principles. There is a 30-page document that sits behind this, but we're hoping that that document, which you can get online, tells a story. It's not dry, it actually fleshes out quite a few of these principles. It gives you a sense of actually learning from other cities. Birmingham is doing some really interesting things in public art at the moment. They've got a fantastic new strategy. They're thinking about involving artists in social housing, for example, in all sorts of different ways. But importantly, as Dom says, the idea was to produce a pocketbook which is written by those on the ground working here in Plymouth, which is a set of kind of provocations, really, to rethink how we commission public art here. So, for example, one of the key things is to avoid fields and jump fences. It's actually a principle inspired by the brilliant designer Bruce Mao. And the idea, just simply behind that proposal, is to think about cross-art form commissioning. It's not always visual arts. Actually, one of the most successful works we ever commissioned was an online sound work, which is a permanent public art work, but it's music and literature, essentially. Another was to listen to young voices. And one of the projects we're hoping to develop here in Plymouth with the Barbican is actually to develop a new young rules of public art, which is actually around how young people are really thinking about what they want in their public space. One of the huge advantages about working outside of conventional venues is you have no threshold to cover, to cross. You are there, you are directly in people's space. And so a sensitivity to actually what lands in that space is incredibly important. And essentially there's also an important principle about testing out and expanding digital technology. We now have at our fingertips, and Plymouth is absolutely at the cutting edge here, of really thinking about how we use the digital across public space in all sorts of different kinds of ways. And finally, one of the very important principles that ties into the visual arts plan is to grow producers as well as artistic talent. We know here that project management of these kinds of projects requires a very different level of negotiation. Take Apart, for example, are a fantastic organisation here who really understand how to get under the skin of the place. Those engagement skills curators don't necessarily always have. Some do, but not necessarily always. And equally, project managers and consultants of public artworks don't necessarily understand how to build a project over time. So we've discussed with Dom and Jodie here a set of next steps which you can find in the new strategy, which the city has amazingly committed to in terms of training and development and skills of producing, to make sure that there is a kind of one-stop shop, a toolkit if you want to produce something in the public realm and you don't want to jump through all of those hoops of red tape to get something off the ground. We also, as you've heard in the plans now coming forward because of this fantastic Ambition for Excellence news, it now means that all of these steps can now be embedded in terms of the large-scale projects that are going to be taking place across the city, with the audience and participation at the very heart of how these projects really are set to unfold in the city. So I'm absolutely delighted to have worked with Plymouth on this. I really feel that you're leading the way versus any other city in the UK in this regard, and I'm incredibly excited to see what happens next. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Claire. Because we're a little pushed for time, what we will do is, in terms of questions, Claire and myself, and again a whole range of people connected to the weekend and the City Council will be going into the Gordon Dalton, here he is, the Douglas Gordon exhibition. There you go. Quite an accolade. So we will be going into the exhibition and also milling around. So if you have questions, then please do come and see us. There's a story behind the title here in terms of the visual arts plan. And those of you who've been in any bands and having to decide what you call your band and going through that torturous process, we'll understand that it can be quite difficult to try and understand what you call something. And I've been in many ropey bands with ropey names. But with this, there was a moment, and it was a moment coming together of hearing two stories. And for those of you that know Andrew Bruton, the principal of Plymouth College of Art, incredibly eloquent with his words, and I'm often scribbling things down, saying, "Oh, I like that. City of Makers, I'll use that." Andrew, for those of you that know Andrew and have heard him talk, he often talks about the horizon. And again, one of the reasons why our programme for Ambition for Excellence is called Horizon. And that, again, Plymouth needs to look out and look beyond the horizon and not resist it. So there was Andrew, in his inimitable fashion, talking about looking beyond. And then I heard a story about a Plymouthian, Isaac Foote, sort of probably best known as the father of Michael Foote. Founder of Foot Anstey, and latterly a politician here in the city. And he was an incredibly socially minded individual, and I've really enjoyed actually reading up a little bit about Isaac Foote. And he was very well connected to local schools. And I think because he was a trained solicitor, he would also know what was happening in terms of various legal disputes within the city. Now, he had an incredible connection apparently to children and young people, especially with those that were in trouble, that were skipping school, and especially those from marginalised backgrounds. And apparently one thing that Isaac Foote would do is he would take individuals to the Hoe, and he would sit with them. There's a bench that looks right out, and he would sit with them, and they would really just contemplate and be in silence. And he would say, "Look, I know things are difficult for you at the moment, but you need to go beyond this." And so it was at that point, and I just thought, actually, this is specific to Plymouth. This is a Plymouth story. And actually, in all we're trying to achieve, and that the cultural community has said that we need to be doing, it's actually about going beyond what we're already doing. And I think that's incredibly important, because people will say, there's so much happening, it's buzzing in the city, it's incredibly vibrant. Yes, it is, but it could be so much better as well. And I think that that's one thing, is for us not to be complacent about where we are. And so that's why I think it's absolutely vital that we go beyond exactly what we're doing now. And go beyond does not just mean about international aspirations. It means about how we nurture talent within the city. It is very much about how we engage with the people of our city, but also how we engage with people that are outside of our city. And so it really is that, that call, that as a city we need to go beyond. And so that's really where it came from, if you were wondering about it. I think there's a fundamental point to make about this, is that this is an organic document. It is not something that will stay as is for 5 years. I think what is incredibly important is that it is adaptable, and that as a city we are adaptable. I think Plymouth typifies itself by being adaptable and flexible. It has had to do that over the years. But I think with this document, we want people to respond to it. And we want to make a commitment that it will change as well over the next 5 years. And so there is an ongoing commitment that we will make sure that we reflect on this, and where appropriate we will adapt and change this. So if you feel you haven't had the opportunity to feed into this document, please do not worry about this. This is an ongoing dialogue, this is an organic document, and we very much want to hear what you have to say. And you know, there's a number of ways we can do that. One of the simplest is responding through our website. Again, we are a very small team, but we try as much as we can to get across the city. But again, you can respond via our website. The plan, both plans are on there. The ambition for excellence and an overview about the Horizon programme is on there as well. So we are really interested about hearing your thoughts. So please do not worry if you feel you haven't had the opportunity to feed in, because there will be ongoing opportunity. We were asked, you know, where's the really detailed plan, you know, that sits behind this? Well, the detailed plan that sits behind this are people's individual plans of their organisations. And that was one thing that people had said to us that they wanted to see, is that how a document or a piece of work, a plan like this, could align with the aspirations of what they want to do. And I would say that's a core part of Plymouth culture, is enabling people to deliver what they want to deliver, and us trying to work as really an organisation that empowers, and where we can try and lend that support, and if we can try and find the money, then we will. So it is people's plans, individual plans, that sit behind this. This is a plan for us as a sector. It's not a plan for Plymouth culture. You know, it is a plan for the city. Just in terms of what we've heard already, you know, we've heard a great deal of positivity, and I think one thing that we need to reflect on in this, and that we again are looking to go beyond, is what some of the challenges might be as well for us as a sector. And you know, I think we will all appreciate that the cultural sector, there is a precarity around, you know, the funding existence, and that as cultural organisations, sometimes we might be a little bit too reliant on public subsidy. So I think what this, and hopefully as we develop over the next few years, we begin to do, is to see how we can grow stronger as an infrastructure, and how that partnership and that spirit of partnership that David very much spoke about can really help to work towards not only better events within the city, but a stronger infrastructure. And I think that is incredibly important. I think an example and an opportunity of that is Mayflower 400. So we understand that with Mayflower 400, there are opportunities for transatlantic partnerships. And partnerships not only with interesting and exciting cultural organisations, but with business, with the likes of the Massachusetts Cultural Council. And so I think it's a real opportunity for Plymouth to position itself, to maybe begin to lead a way in looking at alternative sources of funding, and you know, for us to see how we can look to play a role, you know, not only in our city, but across the southwest and at a national level as well. So I think it is important that we actually address where we are and what some of those challenges might be. Within this document, I mean, you will see the vision, and the vision is a simple but a challenging one, undoubtedly. And it is that the city becomes a centre of excellence for the visual arts, consistently producing and exhibiting work of the highest quality. And then what we have is then a number of themes that sit under this vision, and they are themes of nurturing talent, international, and we've called it for everyone. And by for everyone, we mean Plymouthians, but then new people that arrive in our city. So, you know, visitors that come to Plymouth. And I think what is incredibly important is that we think about what some of the methods and the approaches might be to engaging and delivering across those broad themes. And within the document, I won't go through every commitment, because again, I want to give you the time to read this and to reflect. But we have, as a sector, really looked at, you know, what we think we can commit to. And there undoubtedly will be more, but we wanted to just try and synthesize this into something that is user-friendly, that is readable, and that you can achieve. So I think the vision, again, as David spoke a little bit about the history of the city and of cultural development. Again, I think we are on that journey to achieving this vision, and I think the news of getting the funds for the Horizon project are incredibly exciting, but it's crucial that we deliver, because people are now looking at us, and I think now that spirit of collaboration and partnership is absolutely vital, because it's how we then work with each other, we play on each other's strengths for actually beginning to deliver again a truly magnificent offer. I think one thing I would like to do is just talk a little bit about some of the people and some of the organisations that have actually made this successful. We are at the university. Plymouth Culture is hosted by the university, and their involvement in these two plans, in the Horizon project, which I've explained, are absolutely crucial. Without that, I don't think I would be here talking to you about this right now. So I would like to say a huge thank you for the ongoing support of the university. I think similarly, we have Plymouth College of Art, and Andrew and Hannah are here, as a number of lecturers and students are here as well. And I would like to really pay tribute to the College of Art and the work that has put into both of these plans, and fundamentally to the Horizon project as well. And one thing that is incredibly generous and incredibly powerful is the time that is given. Again, I'm just looking at Hannah and the time that she will put into looking through these documents with a fine-tooth comb and going through bids with a real meticulous nature and giving frank feedback. Again, and Andrew has done that as well, and I would like to say a huge thank you. We would not be here if it wasn't for your support. And then I would like to talk about the City Council. I mentioned about their investment. Again, the ongoing support of Nicola Moyle and Judith and Jodie Bishop to this process has been absolutely fantastic. They've got a small project called the History Centre that they're having to deliver as well, and yet they're still finding time to give to very important strategic developments such as this. And Jodie has played a fantastic role in the coordination of the public art principles and just setting up meetings across the City Council, and has really given a huge amount of time, and so a huge thank you. And then finally, I'd like to say a huge thank you to my colleague Joe. For those of you that know Joe and have known these two documents and the ambition for excellence process in creating Horizon, Joe has been really the engine room of making things happen, and I think is a bit of an unsung hero in what happens. I mean, he's helping out across the weekend of this weekend, and we would not have got to this point had it not been for Joe. Not only chasing people up for content, but actually being an incredibly good copywriter himself. So a huge thank you to Joe. So, we are there with time to spare, and actually we've got a little bit of time for questions as well. Are there any specific questions about the two plans that we've got before we begin to hear from Gordon? Whilst you're thinking about questions, there is one thing that really sprung to mind as well, which is within here, and I think is really important. When we're talking about visual arts, we mean visual arts in the broadest sense of the term. I see, there's Alan Qualtrough there, fantastic copywriter and great expertise around typography. By visual arts, we mean that. We mean digital. We mean moving image. We're talking about film. We're talking about craft. It isn't just fine art that we're talking about here. And then I think there's also then visual arts in its broadest sense of the term, and then other art-based sectors. And I think what is absolutely essential with something like this, and what we see with the public art principles is the need for this to cut across. And we can see through the Weekender that actually we've got a range of different art forms contributing to the Weekender. So we've got Sheila there, Snellgrove from the Barbican. The Barbican Theatre are working on a fantastic piece of work for the Weekender, which is a partnership with Situations and an artist called Miriam Lefkovich, which are these tours across the city, almost like blindfolded 90-minute tours across the city. And again, a great example of a non-visual arts-based organisation, but working in this. And I think actually connectivity across the various different sectors is incredibly important. We've got a digital centre opening up in the city in 2017. And I think what is incredibly important is for us to understand how something like this then has connectivity with digital as well. So that was just a point that I think is worth stressing. If you haven't got any questions, I'll take that as a good sign. But you might have a question after a glass of wine. So do come and talk to Claire or myself or David or anybody from who is talking about the Visual Arts Weekender. We've got the City Council here as well, so please do come and talk to us. But we're going to hear now from Gordon Dalton, who is... I've asked him to fire you up about the Weekender. And he's just going, okay.
Hello! Hey! Oh, it's a bit quiet in here. We're supposed to be celebrating. Round of applause. Come on! I only just recovered from the Weekender last year. And when they asked me back, I said, "You fools! No, I'm not coming back to your beautiful city with the sunshine. No way. I have some demands. One of those demands is I have the opening exhibition at Peninsula Arts and not Douglas Gordon. Secondly, I want my name above the History Centre. Thirdly, everything's in pink. My demands have been met. I'm not going to keep you because I can see some of you twitchy for the alcohol. I'm a bit hot and sweaty, I'm scruffy, and I've been on site since 8 o'clock. I've been doing public art in the city centre. I've made a 20-foot man. It doesn't move. Inside, you can get inside its head and you will see its brain ticking, going, meeting people in Plymouth, knocking down new buildings, building new buildings, meeting people, putting people together. This is the inner workings of this giant piece of public art, and you can be inside that head. You can be inside the Weekender. There's 90 events. Good God. So, I was thinking, I can't tell you what you want to see. I was thinking, how would you do it? So what I do is just kind of put it up there, and I just kind of draw a big Weekender W. You can do that tonight. It might be a bit wobbly. Follow that route, go to see something you haven't seen before. There's over 500 artists, and can we have just another big round of applause for 500 artists? We wouldn't be anything without artists. We wouldn't be sat here, we wouldn't do the jobs we do, we wouldn't enjoy it, we wouldn't go out and meet people. And what I enjoy about Plymouth, and when I came here, is there's a huge feel-good factor that's been mentioned. And that this year, that was here. Whereas last year, when I came last year, it was kind of like, we can do this, we're going to do this. This year, it's kind of about ambition. It's getting bigger and better, and I think today has proved that. It's all about the future. It's all about doing more events, more celebrating, getting people together. Plymouth is successful. With my other hat on, I'm asked as I go around the southwest, how does Plymouth do it? And I talk about this kind of like can-do attitude. And I talk about when I go to the Contemporary Art Visual Art Network, they ask me, oh, how are you doing it in the southwest? And I talk about the artists, I talk about the organisations, I talk about them all working together, but I talk about the audience. And those two things are kind of all on the same level and they work together. The Southwest network is bigger than the Visual Art Network in the UK. our Visual Art Southwest is bigger than the Contemporary Visual Art Network for the UK. So in Southampton in December we have a conference and we're talking about what is art and all the different things about that, what's the art world. We're going to have somebody from Plymouth, who you will know, probably Sarah Chapman, is going to come and talk about that effect after the British Art Show, what happens, but how does an art scene keep moving and keep changing, keep evolving? Because we've got a perfect example, but it's ever changing, it's ever moving. There's more artists coming through the city, there's more artists staying in the city, we've got more students, we've got more people, we've got more audience getting involved. It's bigger, it's better, it's going to continue to get that way if we all keep working and moving forward. Go get a drink. I'll see you outside. I've got to run back on site and turn the plug on because someone's lost the key. And I've probably got it in my pocket. I've got to go. Jody, how you doing?
Just one final thank you before you go. Thank you to all our speakers. Again, real appreciation. If we give them a round of applause, please. So let's go and see the opening of the Weekender. If anyone asks you about the Weekender, the largest weekend of visual arts of its kind in the UK. We've been talking about the Union Street Party and whether that's the largest party of its kind in the UK. We've just said we'll just insert most probably in front of that as well, in true Plymouth fashion. So enjoy the Weekender and thanks so much for your time.
This has been a Chris Summerfield media production. You can contact me at ccsphoto12@hotmail.com or sponsor me through PayPal at christophersummerfield@gmail.com. Thanks for watching this video. It's a lifestyle thing.